the scheduled one. I'll take item 1, declarations of interest, please. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Disclosable interest in item 9 and also disclosable interest in item 18, the transition silly application, as I'm the chairman. I'm going to register a non-disclosable interest also in 18 for the other 2 applications, but I intend to speak and vote on those.
Is that yours? Sorry, yeah. Councillor Nellams.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to declare an interest in items 10 and 11 as an employee of Tresco Estate.
Councillor Francis. Councillor Guy.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just declare a non-pecuniary interest in agenda item 13 as is a friend, but I will vote on it.
Are there any more? Thank you. Item 2, minutes of the previous meeting. Sorry, you went ping. You wanted to say?
Yeah. The application for Colossus was recorded as a refusal.
Sorry, Lisa, I can't hear you.
Sorry. The application for Colossus was recorded as a refusal when it was actually approved subject to a 106. If that can be amended.
Who else is? I can't. Is that gone or?
No, she was pushing the left one instead of the right.
Oh, right, okay.
Left one, I should be sitting here.
Are there any more points on the minutes?
I propose the minutes.
Right, Councillor Mumford proposes. Councillor Guy seconds. All those in favour? That's unanimous, thank you. Chairman's announcements, I've got one. I've had a request from a member for an update from Aisling. If you could, Aisling, could you just give us a very quick update, please, on what's going on?
Okay, so in the world of children and adult services, as you know, in December we had a test of assurance by the Local Government Association, which tests whether or not we're delivering our statutory duties, and that particularly that my role is being filled in line with guidance, and they say yes, it is, and they've got absolutely no worries whatsoever about service delivery. Obviously there are recommendations, as you would expect in anything that's meant to lead to further improvements, and I'll bring that report to you at the next full council. Park House is in a much better situation compared to 12 months ago. The manager is doing an incredible job. We have got 70 hours of vacant care hours, but we are going to hold those because we've done a whole review of shift patterns, and we're going to just have a watching brief about how that goes. But there are savings and efficiencies in staffing, but a very stable and happy staff team. And you probably saw that on Christmas Day the manager hosted a Christmas lunch and invited members of the community to come along, and it was a really, really special time. So all praise to them. We have 6 permanent residents and 2 having respite, and we have 14 clients in the community. It's slightly fewer clients than we've had in the past, and fewer self-funders, so that has an impact on income, but we are managing that through ongoing efficiencies in staffing. The Safeguarding Adults Board chairman came to see us last Friday. I took her for lunch at Park House, and she sat with residents and staff, and afterwards said that she would place her own relatives there, and I don't think there's any greater praise. She goes to every care home in Cornwall. We are presenting to a care provider conference in March. There's 200 care homes coming, and we are speaking about how we turned around Park House from crisis and mitigated all those risks. I think it's an incredible tribute to my team that we are where we are. We also had Safeguarding Children's Partnership came and did a quality assurance panel in December. It's no longer graded. It was graded last year, and on some measures we got outstanding. And even though we're no longer graded, they said there's been even further improvement since they last came, and that's all about multi-agency work for children in need of help and protection. There's a really strong team on the islands keeping children safe and enabling them to thrive. As you know, we got a DFE fund to extend facilities to provide a 3 and 4-year-old nursery offer. That the tenders have come in and we're about to commence work down at Carn Gravel, so lots of moving around, and we're hoping to locate all of Children's Services staff down at Carn Gravel, which will be really handy, I think, for families and that kind of cross traffic between school and that site. We also have had successful negotiations with the Department for Education, where we have got £75,000 to support high-level residential special educational needs placements, a 0.5% increase on our overall settlement, and an additional amount of money to support 3 and 4-year-old funding offers. So that's also going to help with budget planning next year. We put in an application to the DFE for further revenue support for the 3 and 4-year-old funding offer around a project to look at access costs and whether we can recommission boating. We've got through the first round, I've just heard, so we've just got to do some clarification. There's no promises because obviously it's a highly competitive process. And then in the school, again, I will be bringing a paper to full council next month, which will show you the moderator results for last summer, and it will also go into more detail about the role of the local authority in education, because I think it is always hard to get your head around the fact that we don't actually run schools, we drive school improvements. However, as you know, following a warning letter from the local authority, the school went into special measures in 2016, and we were able, therefore, to take more statutory intervention powers. We appointed an interim executive board until the academy process had taken place. Unfortunately, that interim hasn't been very interim at all. The Regional Schools Commissioner, who brokers partnerships with academy trusts, their idea hasn't necessarily come to pass, so there's had to be a reorganisation. The school is now proposed to join the Leading Edge Academy Trust, which is Mounts Bay and 3 primaries in Penzance, which are either good or outstanding. Mounts Bay itself is outstanding and is a teaching school. Sarah Davey is the executive principal. I don't know if you've met her. The interim executive board have done exactly what was required, which is to secure the leadership and governance of the school. And the first thing they did, which was essential, was to appoint a good head. So I've arranged next week that you can go to school and have a look round and meet Jo Yates, who is excellent. And I know she's excellent because Ofsted came back in November to do a Section 8 inspection, and they say that the local authority statement of action is fit for purpose, the school statement of action is fit for purpose, leadership and governance is excellent, that the IEB are doing exactly what's needed. There is still a road to travel. There was a lot going wrong in that school, which is what was identified by the local authority in our warning notice. And Key Stage 2 is something that they need to secure. But even since that report in November, I have seen evidence that outcomes for children are being secured to a greater level. But a lot of good work is going on in there, including at the boarding house, where they said that progress was remarkable, which is not a word that Ofsted tend to use. So that's a quick whistle-stop tour. I only heard about this 10 minutes ago.
Thank you. I dropped it on you, Aisling. Thank you very much, and I do appreciate. I don't intend going on to questions with that. I just wanted members to have a quick update. That was all. Councillor Mumford.
I'd just like to thank Aisling for that report. We did talk about it yesterday as well, and I'm very grateful for that to come through.
Indeed.
And I hope as many people as possible can go down and look around the school next week.
Yeah, just very, very quickly, myself and the Vice Chair went and met the head yesterday to introduce ourselves. Very quickly, Councillor Marcus.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank Aisling and the team for the good work, and I look forward to actually reading about this stuff rather than just getting told about it.
We will
Thanks.
do. We will do. Okay, thank you. Item 4, questions, understanding order 14. I have none. Item 5, to consider reports from committees, including the receipts of minutes. Are there any comments on those? Councillor Guy.
Thank you, Chair. I'll bring it up now if you like. It's just to inform members that we shortlisted for a Chief Fisheries Officer. We appointed one. His name is Tom Hooper, and he starts on the 5th of February.
Thank you for that. Any other comments? Right. We have to consider motions in accordance with Standing Order 12. I have none. Item 8, I have no urgent items. Item 9, moving on to the planning section. Yeah, they're going about it. Right. Is everybody? Yes, everybody that's got an interest has left. Councillor Marcus, I'll let you introduce it, please.
Yeah, item 9, land at Lawrence Brow, St Martin's. I'd like to give Lisa the opportunity to introduce the paper, please.
Yeah, thank you. This is an application for a change of use of land for the siting of a seasonal yurt and a change of use of an existing building for ancillary use associated with the holiday let yurt. As you'll note from the report, the application has not been clearly justified to support an agricultural holding in accordance with Policy 4 as a means of diversifying and supporting a farm. Very limited information on the farming practices that exist on the land have been provided. In terms of other possible aspects of Policy 4 that could be used to justify and support the proposal, it's not being clearly demonstrated how a yurt will improve the existing accommodation or extend the length of the tourism season. Due to the potential change in character to the landscape on this part of St Martin's, the lack of clear information to support the proposal, the application is recommended for refusal for the reasons set out in the report.
Comments and discussion. Councillor Marcus.
I'd like to support the recommendation, i.e. that the application is refused. I can see the amount of work that the applicant has put into the application, but I have to agree with the officer, Mr Wyburn, and Lisa's judgment that it doesn't fit policies 1, 2 and 4 of the existing local plan. And for that reasons, I propose that we refuse the application.
Councillor Mumford.
I'll second that. I agree with Councillor Marcus.
Is there any more discussion? We have a proposal for refusal. All those in favour? Against? Abstentions? 3 abstentions. The application is therefore refused. Item 10 and 11 I intend to take as one item because they are completely independent of each other, interdependent with each other, not independent. Sorry, I've got the wrong teeth in today. Lisa?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, items 10 and 11 are interrelated. One is for the removal of a steel-framed agricultural building from Borough Farm on Tresco and its relocation at the service yard, also on Tresco. The building is unchanged. He's just moving site, essentially, these 2 applications. It's recommended for approval, sorry.
Councillor Marcus.
I think it's worth pointing out that the reason this is not been delegated and is coming to council is that the applicant is a member of the council. For that reason, there is no issue in. I see no issue in. I propose that we approve this.
You've got the wrong teeth in as well.
Got there in the end.
Councillor Bennett. Oh, sorry, it's not Bennett, it's Barker. My apologies, Lady Barker. I still get your surname wrong. Right, we have a proposal by Councillor Marcus, seconded by Councillor Barclay. All those in favour? This is item 10 and 11. Okay, both of them. That was unanimous. Thank you very much. Moving on, item 12. Can you... thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is...
Hang on.
Sorry. This is an application for infill extensions between the existing 3 staff units at Starcastle Hotel. The proposed extensions are timber to match the existing building and will consolidate the current redundant space between the buildings and create additional staff accommodation. As you can see on the PowerPoint. The proposal has been assessed. Due to the existing nature of the site, it's considered to be an acceptable proposal and subject to the conditions is recommended for approval.
Councillor Marcus?
Yeah, it's a very well-screened site, and the applicant makes a good case for increasing staff accommodation, which provides an excellent service for the islands. So therefore, I propose that we approve the application.
Vice Chair seconded it. Any more questions? Sorry, Councillor Smith?
Yeah, just on 6.7, are there any details on the colour of the cladding?
I will have to have a look. I assume they are to match, not contrasting colours, but we can...
If you could check, please.
Yeah.
And, yeah. Not bright orange or something.
Yeah.
Right, we have a proposal and seconded by members. Can we have all those in favour of approval? And that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Item 13, Briar Lee. Can you... Oh, so you've got Councillor Francis back in, please. Lisa?
Thank you, Chair. This is an application for a rear conservatory on this existing semi-detached bungalow at Pella Street on St Mary's. The proposed extension would be UPVC, which will match the existing windows and doors on this property. The site is well screened. It's considered that it would not be prominent in the wider landscape or give rise to harm to the amenity of neighbouring properties. The proposal has been assessed and subject to the conditions is recommended for approval.
Councillor Marcus?
Again, this is coming to council because the applicant is a council employee for no other reason, so therefore I propose that we approve the recommendation.
Seconded by the Vice Chair. Any comments? All those in favour? Against? Abstentions? One abstention. Thank you. That item is approved. Item 14. Pieces of 4. Lisa?
Thank you, Chair. Again, this is on committee because the applicant is related to an officer of the council, and this is a simple change in door that requires planning permission from a plain timber door painted white to a plain timber door with a window also painted white. The application is recommended for approval.
Councillor Marcus?
Again, it's only coming to council because of the applicant's related to an officer of the council, therefore I propose that we approve the recommendation.
I'll second it.
Seconded by the Vice Chair. Any comments? All those in favour? Sorry, Councillor Williams, do you want to say something?
I was just going to query how far we take the issue of being related to an officer of the council into consideration. This is, I know we need to be transparent, but this seems to be so uncontroversial. Do we go back to cousins and godchildren and things like that? I can see we just got to draw the line somewhere, but if we just use the precedent of being related, there's also a huge amount of relationships going on that are going to clog up the system, aren't they?
We are going to run across this on a regular basis on a small community that we're at, and yes, I understand your concerns, and I think everybody else does as well. However, I think we leave it to the planning officers to take it as far as necessary on their professional advice. Councillor Guy?
Yeah, just to endorse what Councillor Joel Williams has just said, that we need to address this, I think.
We are in a situation where everybody around this table has got relatives over here, so we're going to run.
At the end of the day, Chairman, it's a gate.
Yes, I understand. However, the last thing that we need is to be accused of nepotism. But I do appreciate what you're saying, certainly. Okay, all those in favour again, please. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Item 15. Budget setting for the financial year. Andy. Thank you very much. A couple of comments from the Chair before we move on to general discussion is that I'd like to put mine and the Vice Chair's personal thanks on record to Andy and his team. This is the most clear information we've had at this stage of a budget setting cycle for years, and members do appreciate that. Andy, would you pass on our thanks, please? Secondly, Teo and I are pursuing government next week. The discussions are ongoing as far as all the finance packages are concerned, and as soon as we've got any information about that, you will be informed. The other comment I would like to make, in particular as far as the press is concerned, is that the suggested the figure that Andy has mentioned for council tax increase is at the moment is obviously indicative, and we've got to approve that at the next council meeting when the budget comes to full council. With those comments, I'd like to open up the discussion. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, again, thanks again to Andy Brown for the good quality of information in the report. Just picking up on that issue of the council tax rise in 5.4 and 5.5. I think it's a very difficult one. I think we're sort of backed a little bit in a corner by this. There's an expectation that we should put up council tax, but, you know, frankly, talking from the sort of from the local population's point of view, I think this is less than an ideal situation. I think we need to think very carefully about how we sell this and also what the population are going to get in return, essentially. You know, we should be giving a better service for the increased contribution in council tax, I think. Moving on to 8.6. The options for further budget savings. Again, I think we still need a fuller discussion about what services we can actually still afford to do. We have a proposal to cut 215, just nearly 16,000, and still a gap of nearly 200. Potentially that can be smoothed by borrowing, but I still think we need to have that discussion about what services can or cannot be run. Just a clarification question, please, on the general fund reserve. So at the moment we are predicting the general fund will be down to about 650,000. The extra borrowing, will that go straight into the general fund reserve, therefore raising it to approximately 1.3 million or so?
Yeah, so the borrowing we undertake, the 1.3 will actually increase to 1.9.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think that's very important because we need to really build our general fund reserve. Then I was just going to go on to Appendix 1. Again, thanks for the extra information received, albeit later than planned. I think just to say in principle, I think it's very important that we receive this detail of information. I think that's really, really important. In Appendix 1, that just simply isn't enough, as was in the published papers. You know, for instance, the community fund application, we had several pages of information to decide on about £2,000, and here we've got, just a few lines to decide on 216. Could I ask a question of clarification, firstly on the energy contract? We're looking to save around 10% on the energy contract there, and also note that I'd like to see a principle whereby are we buying renewable energy, and especially in the light of smart islands where we should be promoting low carbon energy, and will that have an impact on our energy supply in that respect? Thanks.
Right. Before we move on to that, I'm going to ask the Chief Exec to answer that question in a moment. However, I'd just like to make one comment about council tax, is that as far as our basis goes, I understand the reluctance of members to hike council tax to the absolute maximum, and as far as general public is concerned, I'm one of those as well, and I fully concur with what you've said. However, I'd like just to remind members in particular that the Isles of Scilly in particular are one of the lowest pound for pound council tax bases in the whole of the UK, and we have been historically as well. I'm not trying to push the debate, but I'd just like to put that piece of information out in the public arena. We are considerably considerably below the national average as far as council tax is concerned. Chief Exec, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Just a very quick response to the energy question posed by Councillor Smith. Historically, the Council have had a large number of, not so much suppliers, but a large number of different bills coming in with regards to energy. And the various bills and various arrangements that have been put in place attract various tariffs. So therefore, as part of the savings exercise, we are in the process of consolidating the bills into a single bill. And of course, we will try to negotiate a significant element of that to be provided by renewables. So that process has started. Clearly, the ultimate objective will be to assure that the energy used by the local authority, first of all, that the cost will come down significantly, but secondly, that it will be supporting the emerging community ventures initiative that will provide an also silly tariff for energy.
Thank you. Councillor Sims.
Further to your comments, the Chair's comments regarding council tax. Now, it's 11.5% over 2 years compounded, which is quite a lot, and I can understand why everybody who's got to pay it, which includes everybody in here, would be quite alarmed on that. But the issue is really yourself and the Chief Executive are going to be, pursuing government. I don't know where you'll find them, but you'll be next week. Well, if we go up there and say we need more money for various things, which we clearly do, and we are not delivering the full whack of council tax, they're going to say, well, you don't really need it that much, do you? So I think it's very, very important. I mean, it's not pleasant for people to 11.5% over 2 years. However, I don't really think there's any alternative whatsoever on that. And I wanted to ask a question. 3.5, the Rural Services Delivery Grant. I know the Isle of Wight don't get this as well. How actually are we defined? Because we're certainly not cosmopolitan or urban.
So, the distribution method for that is something under our needs-based assessment, which is historic. And outdated. There's a There is a factor within that distribution method called super-sparsity, and it looks at that method and distributes based on that need. So the Isle of Wight have actually done a bit of analysis on that because they don't get it as well, and I'm trying to get hold of that because it was done by the University, I think, of Portsmouth to understand exactly, why we're missing out on that. But because they're using that outdated method to distribute it, we therefore are not classified under that grant funding as being rural enough to get that funding, because the funding is specifically designed for those councils that have got increased costs in delivering service because of their rurality. So.
Thank you. I mean, I know I did read the submission to Parliament by the member from the Isle of Wight, and just out of interest, the people on the Isle of Wight are absolutely furious with the cost of their transport to Hampshire as well, so it's nice to know there's other people in the same boat.
Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to support Councillor Sims. I was going to say exactly the same that he just did about the council tax. We can't weaken the case that the Chair and the Chief Exec go to London. We have to show that we're going to help ourselves as much as is possible, even if we don't like the vehicle that we've been given with which to do it. And as the Chairman said, we do have historically quite low council tax rates. If I could just bring up one small point on the top of page 8 where we're talking about using reserves, and I know that that's prudent and I don't disagree, but with regard to housing reserves, I'd just like to make the point that my understanding is that most of those housing reserves have actually been generated from people who are paying their social housing rent. Therefore, it seems to me we have a moral imperative to try and prioritise using those housing reserves for the benefit of the social housing stock and its improvement, and for increasing our social housing stock wherever we can. That's all, thank you. And may I just add that when it comes to savings, I think we have to be very mindful that if there's any substantive implications for the community in service delivery or in other areas, we do need a comprehensive community impact assessment on substantial savings, and I shall be adding that, making a proposal that we add that to one of the recommendations. Thank you.
Before we actually have any more meaningful savings to look at. I would, and I understand when we asked for this review of management and operations, Mr. Chairman, that there was no suggestion at the time that this should be a Plan B and should be put back. So I would like to make a proposal, please, that the recommendations that have been put forward for us to consider, but in that recommendation that point 3 is moved to point 4, and at point 3 I'd like to move that
Sorry, just because it was fairly lengthy, can you just read that out again for clarity, please?
that the longer-term option referred to as item 4 in Appendix 1 be moved forward and instigated as soon as possible with a report on progress brought to March Council, together with a further study of possible future savings that will address the budget shortfall.
Thank you. That's a proposal. Is there a seconder? We have a seconder in Councillor Barclay. Okay. Before I take a vote on that at the moment, are there any further discussions on it? I can't see your light.
Can I just make the point? I think that's 6 weeks. It's rather swift to get that in for the March meeting. I just don't imagine 1 minute is possible. However, it's up to members. It seems a very, very short period of time.
Sorry, Vice Chair.
I think my understanding was a report on progress. I think Councillor Francis would in no way believe that we would get all of the way down that route. I would say that as lead member for finance, I totally support exploring all the longer term options and doing the work. And we've got to start the work in order, obviously, to have the more detail to decide which options we're actually going to be exploring. So I would totally support and be interested in colleagues' views on the longer term options, for example, the Friends of Scilly approach. I think it's a good idea, but I'm not quite sure how it would work. Council tax increases on second homes. I think we need a lot more detail on that, but it's an interesting idea. Fair funding for the Isles of Scilly. I think all our officers are working extremely hard on that. And as the Chair and Chief Executive, we know, are going up to London next week, so we wish them the very best of luck for that. And I don't disagree with moving forward item 4 at the top of page 10, because all we're doing surely is starting a process that would be a sensible thing to do. So if it hadn't been seconded by Councillor Berkeley, I would have seconded it myself as lead member for finance. Thank you.
Councillor Marcus.
Yeah, I think this is born out of frustration with just the brevity of time that members have had to review the budget and to look at possible savings. So if I would support this, but also ask the question that is the budget setting process going to be longer and more relaxed next year? Not relaxed in terms of relaxation, but just spread out.
Can I just
started sooner?
Can I just pass comment on that from the Chair? I've had discussions with Andy Brown, and we would hope to return next year to the normal budget setting cycle, as opposed to the protracted one. Obviously, there's a lot of work done on previous years, and I do use that word in plural, accounts to be signed off before we could get to this stage. With the new IT systems and the new software systems being in place and up and running for the next financial year, we should be in a position to be able to bring the budget setting back into a normal cycle. Is that correct, Andy? If you'd like to pass further comment, I'd be happy.
Yeah, I'll use this one. Yeah, and I totally understand and accept frustrations from members in terms of being informed to make the decisions and going through the detail around savings. In an ideal world, we would have been discussing this around October, November time. The MTFP would have come in July time, and that's the cycle that I want to move to, so that you've got more time to establish those savings, and indeed officers have got more time as well to work those options up and provide that information. It's just unfortunate in terms of the position that we're in, that the focus in terms of the resources that I had at my disposal was to sort the accounts out rather than focusing on the budget. But the Chair's made this quite clear that we want to move to that cycle, and indeed that is the plan for next year, that we will bring forward the budget cycle so there is more time to look at these issues. Plus with all the other things that we want to improve, so that we're actually reporting to members on the progress of delivering those savings, because I know that has been another issue that we haven't been able to truly resolve this financial year in how we are delivering on the 609,000 savings that we said we were going to deliver in 17-18. It's been more of a bottom line issue. So there's always many things that we can improve on, but there's a couple of those critical ones that I want to implement for 18-19. So take that on board.
Councillor Guy.
Yeah, just for the public record, Chairman, I'm sure senior managers review the situation on a weekly basis.
Right. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I was just going to ask that councillors have actually given a little bit more, well, we know the new system will help, but more information on budget monitoring and also monitoring the progress of savings, because it's been sadly lacking to date, to the problem where we're actually looking at budgets and not really knowing how much we've achieved. I know things have improved to date, but it must be as difficult for the officers with the tools that they've currently got as it is for members. So we're all looking forward to the new system and hope it works. I would just say some of the Appendix 1 list of savings that we're just about to approve do seem aspirational rather than set, as something that we really think we're going to achieve. So I think it's especially important that we do monitor the situation as we go along in case we need to change tack if we're not actually achieving what we think we're going to achieve, which I'm sure our 151 officer would actually support. And I would also like the Chair to actually decide perhaps how appropriate this particular forum is for all the detailed discussion that we will need to have around longer term options. I'm assuming that all of us have much we would like to contribute to the debate, but possibly with what we've got on the agenda today now is not the time for any more discussion.
Yeah, just one comment before I carry on with that. We will have a business case for this, and I assume we're doing another workshop on the budget before we actually bring it to full council. Sorry, Councillor Marcus.
Can we talk about the actual proposals now?
Yeah.
So again, I'd like to echo previous councillors saying my uncomfortableness at the 5.99%, the 6% rise in council tax to cover central government forcing local taxation to cover up the issues around funding that they're propagating across the country. That's my opinion. But I'd also like to draw the public's attention to paragraph 2.2, where Andy states the cost of providing services outweighs the resources available. So we have to make sure that our services are value for money and that we work within the budget that we're given, like any other business. In terms of the savings referenced, I've got a couple of questions around them. In the travel costs, it says that the cost of travel to the mainland is approximately £140,000 a year. Is this just officers? This sounds like quite a lot. I wonder if we can get some more clarity around that, and whether we can save more than just the £8,000 by not actually taking so much travel. The review of structure and arrangements for shared services. There's a line there which says about further collaboration of shared back office functions. I just want to be assured that I know the back office is creaking as it is. I'd be very reticent to approve any loss of resource in terms of people in that area. So some clarity around that would be good. The waste contracts and commercial collections, the numbers there, I can't seem to make those add up to 40,000 somehow, because the last one says that 10,000 we're not doing that anymore. So I don't quite get what that adds up, the maths around that one. And shutting the commercial, the waste processing site as well for all but 2 days a week. I don't remember approving that. I remember looking at various options, but that wasn't one of them, unless I'm mistaken. And finally, the £30,000 reviewing the crewing model for fire and rescue. That seems quite aspirational to achieve that in starting next year, so in 2 months' time. So, yes, so it's a challenge. So just some...
There's a number of points that you've raised in there. Can I ask the Chief Exec to comment on the travel first, and then I'll come to you afterwards, Craig?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, the travel is all the travel arrangements that are put in place, primarily air travel. And this is both, well, not both, it's staff, it's members, but also external contractors and external people that do provide services on the Isles of Scilly, both commercially, but also colleagues from through our inter-authority agreement. So it's the whole package of travel.
Does it include accommodation as well?
No, this is just the flights.
Yeah. Okay.
So we are in a process, and this was started quite a few months ago, in negotiating how we can to bring that down. And there's 2 ways we're bringing this down. Firstly, we believe that we could negotiate a better deal with the current transport provider in terms of the tariffs that are being applied to our council travel. And secondly, increasingly, and we're very strongly encouraging the better use of technology to attend meetings and work through meetings. For instance, the new system, the platform, IT platform, that hopefully will be rolled out early in the financial year, March, April, will provide the opportunity to have Skype face-to-face.
I have brought this one up with the Chief Exec, and we've had discussions over this over the last fortnight or so, and quite robust as well. Right, Craig.
Chairman, so I'll be honest enough to say that certainly in some of my service areas, some of these targets are going to be stretching and they are going to be aspirational. And that's partly because of the changing landscape, particularly in terms of waste management. We're looking at, as you know, a range of options at the moment in terms of transforming our services, so particularly introducing recycling. We know that we also have pressures in terms of off-island waste, particularly in terms of Tresco. So the landscape has been changing because obviously since we came up with this list, we have actually had other reports where the implications of those decisions will clearly have a bearing in terms of the overall cost. So there does need to be more work in terms of waste management. There are a number of uncertainties as well because we are reliant on external contracts, particularly in terms of freight and haulage. And of course, we can't predict what those prices and costs will be in the future. So there is more work to be done, if I'm being honest, in terms of waste management. And some of those savings are going to be quite aspirational and I will say quite challenging and quite stretching, and bearing in mind the significant savings over the last 3 years we've made in waste management, whilst we've actually increased the amount of waste we're actually dealing with. So that's all I can say at this stage, but we are actually endeavouring to obviously make our service in waste management more effective, more efficient, and wherever possible make some savings. In terms of the crewing model, in terms of fire and rescue, that's also aspirational. We're working very closely at the moment as part of the collaboration with Cornwall. They're leading on this particular piece of work, but it is again going to be potentially transformational, which will have bearings potentially in terms of particularly the off-island communities and the issues around community impacts, and also, of course, the staff themselves. So there will have to be engagement and consultation. And these things do actually take time. But we're doing everything we possibly can to reduce our costs in terms of fire and rescue, which, as you all know at the moment, is around £460,000, which is disproportionately high compared to everywhere else in the United Kingdom. And we know the reasons for that, and there are some challenges there. And of course, we are still in discussions with the Home Office. But, you know, to answer your question, Councillor Marcus, that is aspirational.
Councillor Sims?
Regarding the Vice Chairman's comment a little while ago about the savings being aspirational, now I remember last year when I looked at the savings that we were doing, and I really thought, well, we hadn't got a cat in hell's chance of saving that amount. But it's my understanding now, since from a workshop we had recently, and I'm going to use the word caveat, I'm the first person in here to use it today, and we can't have a finance discussion without the word caveat, but I think Andy did tell us that, as far as he can tell, we've achieved those savings, and with a potential, again caveat, £90,000 underspend. I just really want to put it on the public record that the officers and the staff have done an extremely good job in achieving, at least potentially achieving, the savings we wanted last year, plus. So I don't know if you could clarify that a little bit, Andy, but I do think it's useful for the public to have some sort of knowledge of that.
Yeah, so in terms of the budget monitoring, it's correct in terms of the overall bottom line position. We are forecast to be have a small underspend, and we'll be bringing another report on that to bring the latest position, but that still looks like to be the case. I think, so in terms of that, because we haven't been able to track the savings individually and whether they have truly been delivered as was set out, that's my only caveat around that. But from the bottom line perspective, you cannot get away from the fact that the forecast spend is within the overall budget that was set. So whether that was through those savings that was approved or through other means is debatable, but you cannot get away from the fact that we haven't got any other pressures. So that would suggest that, by and large, that those savings have, in the majority of sense is being delivered because of the council's overall bottom line position.
Right, there is one comment I'd like to make just before we move on, is on the whole of the thing. I'd just like to remind members that we will be going to public engagement in early February. So this, obviously, we will get feedback from those meetings and put those into our deliberations as far as the council tax setting in the February meeting. Councillor Guy.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was just going back to what the Chief Exec said about travel costs. And I think with public perception out there and the way they view travel with the authority, I think for the public record it is worth pointing out members and officers that have to go to certain meetings sometimes cannot be done by Skype. They do have to go and attend these meetings. I attend 4 a year that you can't even get an FOI on. So it's just for the public record that it's not wasted money and we're going because we have to go.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'd just like to endorse that, is that I have, as chairman, have kept my travel to the mainland down to an absolute minimum as far as that is concerned, and used modern technologies as much as humanly possible. Right, are there any more comments? Do you want to?
Yes, I'd just like to ask the Chair if he'd take each recommendation in turn, please, which I dare say he might have been doing anyway. But if I could just amend recommendation 2, that after subject to formal ratification in February, I would like to add that comprehensive community impact assessments by senior managers be undertaken for any substantial proposed savings, so that we look at the effect, which we all do all the time, on our community of the savings that we're about to make. Thank you.
I think that clarifies some of it. I think it's normal process, as we do anyway, but it crosses the T's and dots the I on that one. Are there any more comments before I take these on an individual basis? Councillor Smith?
Yeah, just on my recommendation 2. I mean, I think we've found a lot of gaps in here, really. I mean, I can sort of say that I can approve it as the basis of setting the budget, but frankly, I think there's so many holes in it. I think it has to go back to more of a basic level, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I would point out is that we are looking at this as a basis for budget savings, as opposed to casting tablets of stone. Right, in that case, I'm going to take them in order, along with the proposal that Councillor Francis made. So we'll have item 3 as the one that Councillor Francis made, and then take the number 4, which is currently number 3, thereafter, if you're all in agreement with that. Okay, recommendation 1, on the assumptions used. Can we have a proposer? Proposed by Councillor Mumford, seconded by Councillor Grottick. All those in favour? Against? Abstentions? That's approved. Item 2, with the addition that there is a community impact assessment added on substantial changes. We have a proposer. Proposed by Councillor Sims, seconded by Councillor Davis. All in favour? Against? So what do you do? Oh, you're for. Are you sure? In that okay. In that case, that one was unanimous. Item 3. Can I ask Councillor Francis to read his proposal out again, just for clarity, please? Doesn't have to be that slow, Robert.
Progress brought to
Thank you. We've had that proposed and seconded already. Do you want to comment on it?
No, just confirm that I'm
All
seconding
right.
it.
We've had that proposed and seconded. All in favour? And that's unanimous. Thank you. And now the new item 4 about to get delegated authority given to the 151 officer in consultation with myself. I have a proposer, please. Proposed by Councillor Sims, seconded by Councillor Guy. All those in favour? That is that unanimous? Yeah, that's unanimous. Thank you. Moving on, item 16. Andy.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the first update, I have to say, on the capital programme for this financial year. So it's very late in the day that we would normally be reporting on the capital programme. And again, that kind of re-emphasises for me the financial position and the situation where we are still actively progressing and dealing with. And in future, just as we've talked around the budget cycle and improvements in monitoring, this will also become a regular report in terms of the Council's capital programme. Clearly there's quite a sizable amount of spend that goes through the capital programme, and you'll see in the tables in page 12 that the total for this financial year in terms of the programme is 4.6 million. The current forecast, though, is quite considerably down at 1.6 million, and there's various reasons and rationale in terms of why that forecast is down. The other thing I should be pointing out is, of course, in the revenue budget monitoring report that went to the last council, I prudently put in an estimate of £250,000 to deal with any issues around capital programme and the financing. And to a certain extent, that has come to fruition in terms of the exposure that we have there. And we just point out that there's revenue contributions of £61,000 that will be needed from the revenue budget in the current financial year in respect to works that are being undertaken. So that will be a pressure in the revenue budget that we will have to fund. It's not to the extent of £250,000, but at this stage there is a pressure of around 60,000 there at this stage of the financial year. I think the other thing that, and we mentioned it in the budget report as well, is that clearly the revised programme was set some years ago, and we do need to review the capital programme and reset the capital programme, and it needs to be, because it obviously is an investment, one-off investment in assets in terms of the council and funding, and it should be in line with your corporate plan. So as we're realigning and reissuing the corporate plan, where this council wants to invest, at the same point we should be revising the capital programme to be aligned with the corporate plan. Happy to leave it there and open it to questions.
The one comment I'd make from the chair is that on its surface it looks as though we've made a £3 million saving there. Just for the public record, is that I'd like to put it on record that has absolutely no bearing whatsoever on the revenue spend of the council. It is not a saving, a net saving that we can actually access to support our revenue budget at all. So that's very, very clear. Okay, thank you. Chair of Finance, or Vice Chair.
Thank you.
Hat you want to wear.
Right, two hats. I don't want to be critical, but I find page 11, 1.2 a little bit woolly, dare I say it, because we don't seem to have a time frame for when we're actually going to review and revise the capital programme. We actually started talking, I looked back at revising the capital programme in September 2016, and I personally would like to feel that we could at least start that work. I'm very mindful that there's a lot on the 151 officer's plate, and so perhaps I'd like his advice to support my recommendation, which is that we actually need to start the review and revising the capital programme at least before the end of this financial year and get as far along the road as we can in order to both look at it in more detail and also inform the rest of our budget discussions. Would Mr Brown like to come in on that one?
Yeah, I'd certainly, in terms of the introduction as well, I would, of course, advocate reviewing the capital programme. I think it is timely for review. I think the critical thing for me is the capital programme is the council's investment into assets and infrastructure, whether it be housing, roads, airport, etc., that the council wishes to undertake over the short and medium term, and it should therefore, the review should be in line with whatever the direction of travel the council is planning to take in terms of the corporate plan. So I don't know if the Chief Exec wants to comment on the emerging corporate plan and the timescales for that. For me, it should coincide with that, but of course I do advocate that we do that sooner rather than later.
Chief Exec?
I can just only echo comments made by the Section 151 officer. Members clearly are aware that members have started the refresh of the corporate plan. The refresh is providing, I think, more focus on and probably a bit sharper in terms of the priorities and the plan that members have for, or the vision that members have for the council operating on these islands. And I can only echo the comments made by the 151 officer that the capital programme clearly needs to be aligned and is driven by the plan that members put in place. My personal view is that we should complete the corporate plan as soon as possible, and definitely before the end of this financial year, so that we have clarity how the investments that members want to make in next or future financial years, and also then align it to the midterm financial plan in terms of its revenue to support this.
Okay. Thank you. Any further questions? We have a recommendation that the Council notes the update position of the capital programme. Councillor Guy is proposing that recommendation. Councillor Mumford seconded. All in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Moving on, item 17. Sorry? Yeah. Nicola, can you please?
Thank you. So I'm pleased you just approved that list of savings for immediate delivery, because one of the items in there is looking at the commercial opportunity for services and their delivery. So the report at item 17 relates to the charging of food businesses for re-rating. It's a discretionary service, and it's come about arising from discussions with the customer. So the customers have come to our new environmental health officers and said, actually there's a service provision here that isn't provided by the council, could you provide it for us please? Of course we said yes, we'd love to, but we need to make sure we get cost recovery. So on the basis of cost recovery, that's £60 an hour, we'd like to offer a new service for businesses that allows them to get re-rated for food hygiene rating system, and that fee that we've come up with is based on cost recovery, and that is based on the fact that it takes around about 2.5 hours to do an inspection and support and advice that goes with that, alongside some admin and travel fees. So that gives us a discretionary service fee of £175. It doesn't mean businesses have to take this service, it's something for them to opt into if they would like to. So we would like to go forward with a fixed fee for this year. We will monitor demand and actual costs over this coming year because it's a new service, and also we'll look at other opportunities for commercial service delivery within that service, environmental health service area over the coming year as part of our budget savings review. So the recommendation is that we agree the new charges set out £175 per inspection, and that we'll review that ongoing in the next year to see whether we can increase demand and make sure the costs are competitive. Thank you.
Councillor Guy.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank Nicola and her team for bringing the Isles of Scilly into the 21st century, and I would like to propose a recommendation.
Councillor Francis has seconded. Comment, Councillor Marcus?
Sorry, just before we take this is a new service, so I understand that you might be unsure about projections and how much income this is actually going to generate, but have you got a rough estimate, idea of sort of what we're looking at here?
I think in terms of the number of services that would want to use this, it's difficult to predict. So the example this came out of is one business was inspected, they didn't get the food hygiene rating that they were hoping for, and they wanted to quickly get that re-inspected to bring that level up. Now, hopefully, with the advice and guidance that our guys are giving, we would hope that not many businesses are in that position, and we'll try and bring everybody up to the right standard. But it's difficult to predict. What we can do is just offer the service and monitor the use of it and promote the use of it. So it's really hard to say how much demand there is. I think what it does come under is that £5,000 that you've set within the budget for the coming year for commercial service delivery. So it's one of the things we'll offer. What we don't know, we'll monitor it. And we'll ask the customer other services that they would like us to deliver. And it's about a mismatch of all those things together, coming together to try and get those commercial opportunities explored and the income back into the council. So it's hard to predict. It's really hard to predict because it's outside of our control.
Thank you very much, because, yeah, the last 3 meetings when we've had fees and charges papers, I've not been pleased about the quality of those papers. So I just wanted to make sure why that, before having a go, why that wasn't involved in this paper. So,
Councillor Roger?
Yeah, I'd like to just, as a food business operator, thank the new environmental team for their engagement process, which is a welcome refreshment and change from the past, and would wholly endorse these additional charges for the extra level of service being provided.
Councillor Smith?
Can I just clarify the rate? Was this, I think you mentioned £175 per inspection or per hour?
It's per inspection. It's £60 an hour. That's based on a cost recovery basis. Right. And that's why I think it's easy for businesses to know it's a fixed price. It's £175. They know what they're paying. But we do need to review it to make sure we are at cost recovery on these inspections. So we will monitor it through the coming year.
I would also just echo Councillor Marcus's view that there hasn't been good enough business cases presented for a lot of fees and charges. I accept this is a new business that's somewhat difficult to do, but some projections would have been perhaps helpful, I think.
Councillor Barclay.
Thank you, Chairman. Just 3 comments. One is that it's a new service rather than a new charge, isn't it? We're not given the information of what previous charges were. And also, just on a personal level, I wondered if Councillor Rogers should have declared an interest.
Right, we have no more. Are there any more comments before I move on? Right, we've got a recommendation that members agree to the new charges set out in Appendix A. Is there a proposer? Proposed by Councillor Guy, seconded by Councillor Watt. All those in favour? Against? Abstentions? Thank you, that's carried.
I'll take this one.
Agenda item 18, I'll hand over to the Chief Exec.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I will be very brief. In front of members a number of applications on the community fund. As a quick reminder, Council sets aside £3,500 every year for community activities. At the last full Council meeting, members changed the format and process for application, so this is following the new application form, and I take the papers as read.
Councillor Grottic.
Thank you, Chairman. I was behind the proposal to defer the applications at the last meeting on the grounds that the authority doesn't have a lot of money, which is obviously acknowledged by us all. However, on reflection, there wasn't much of a time scale for people who were applying to the community fund to actually look at how we were now asking them to behave, which I think is to ask them to be a little bit more proactive in looking at whether or not there were other sources of funding that they could apply to as well as the council. And so I would like to say that, having thought about it, I would now support our use of the community fund. I'm grateful to the applicants who gave us more financial information. I think the new system will work better because we shall have more information, and I would like to support the applications.
Are we taking these applications one by one? Which one are we starting with then? Is that the Folk Club? Is it the first one? Sorry.
Sorry, just to say, I think the fund application process has been made a lot more sensible and transparent. I think Joseph Payne's done a good job on that. And just to give support generally to the principle of the community fund, I think actually it's important that us as a council enable the community to do things with small pots of money.
Thank you, Chairman. I was just going to clarify a contradiction in my own mind as much as anything. I don't feel I can support the Folk Club's application. I've got nothing against Folk Club per se, but I think they've probably had their fair share over the last 4 or 5 years with 4 applications. But having said that, as and when the Christmas lights report does come to us, I think I probably would justify that in terms of, for St Mary's people at least. Well, fair enough, but I think I would just look at the universal element versus the niche element.
Can I just clarify on the pot of fund? I believe this is £3,500, which is budgeted until the end of March this year. So in fact, it does have to be spent quite soon if we're going to spend it.
I would thank the officer for implementing the new scheme and shows the tightrope that these small organisations actually work in and the amount of profit that's involved, which is minimal, and therefore the importance of any money that the council can donate to them to ensure that these events do happen. So therefore I would like to approve, I would support all 3 applications.
Drama Express.
I'd like to propose that,
got a
please.
proposal from the Vice Chair, seconded by...
Could I just say something first? They are actually coming because we have notices up in our shop, and they have just been given money from the Steamship Company Community Fund as well. I don't know if that makes any difference to anybody's...
Comments before I take it to the vote? Yeah.
I'd just like to comment, several applications, since we looked at these applications, the Steamship Company have given money, and also the Garrison Fund Day have given some money as well. But I think we just have to look at what is on the table, and given that I totally support the aims of Drama Express, I'm going to continue to propose that we accept the application. Presumably they could always put money in the bank and come back again.
Any further comments? All right, we have a proposal that's been seconded for the Drama Express proposal. All those in favour? I think that is unanimous. No, hang on. Against? Not unanimous. 2 against. Okay, thank you. The third one, which is the Christmas lights. What have I missed then? Oh, sorry. Yeah, my apologies. I'm reading bits wrong. So that's my mistake, which proves I'm not fallible. Okay, I chose my words carefully. is transition silly, please. Proposed by Councillor Sims, seconded by Councillor Barclay. Are there any further comments? No, I'll take it to the vote then. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Now can I move on to the Christmas lights? Right. Yeah. Yeah. The next one is members defer the consideration for the Christmas lights application. Are there any comments or proposals? Councillor Sims has proposed that we defer. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Marcus. Any comments? All those in favour of deferral? Against? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Right, agenda item 19. As you're all aware, we get 2 invites per annum for a member and partner to attend Buckingham Palace Garden Party. I went last year and Councillor Mumford went last year. I'd be quite frank, we had a super time. The weather shone on us and it couldn't have been better. It really was. However, I'd just like to remind members that the authority pay for one member and their partner's expenses. The second one is usually self-funded. Councillor Guy.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think I would personally like to recommend that we send Councillor Joel Williams. I think he's doing a sterling job for the young people of Scilly. He's settled into the role of a new councillor, and I would like to propose that we send him. I think it'd be a good opportunity.
Is there a second for that? Seconded by Councillor Barclay. Yeah, you want to...
Oh, sorry, I'm too fast. I was going to propose our second representative, but perhaps you want to take them singly.
Yeah, you can propose a second representative that pays for themselves. That's not a problem. I can take it all in one then.
I'd like to propose Councillor Francis attends at his own expense, if he's agreeable.
You happy with that, Councillor Francis?
Yes, as long as I pay for myself.
Have we got a seconder for that? Councillor Legg, any further comment?
I think you missed Councillor Watt wanted to say something.
Do you wanted to say something, Steve? Sorry. Your light was on, Councillor Watt.
Well, yes, Chairman. I mean, I'm not happy with the proposal that we fund it from the council tax fund. I think regarding the financial position the council is in, I think my estimate is about £1,000 to send 2 people up to London and back again, plus accommodation as well. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think it's a bit of a bagatelle or even a frippery, really. I mean, all you do is stand around on a grassy lawn, eating cucumber sandwiches and drinking a cup of tea. It's not as if you actually meet the Queen. It's, I think it's an anomaly.
Councillor Guy.
I would totally disagree with them comments made by Councillor Watt. I've attended that. My wife's a royalist, and I think it is an opportunity for people to go to represent these islands and this council. And I think it is an absolutely wonderful day. And you do meet the Queen, not to shake her hand, but within handshake distance.
Councillor Mumford.
Yeah, well, I would agree with that. And it doesn't cost £1,000 because I know what my expenses were, and it doesn't cost £1,000. Nowhere near.
We do have proposals. If we've got any more comments, I'm prepared to take them, but we've got 2 proposals, and I'll take them as... Sorry, Councillor Sims.
I just wanted to broadly agree with Steve. It's like a very well-attended garden fete with limited attractions.
Yeah, considering the discussion we had last month on the community fund when we were actually helping people on the island, I think it's a luxury, to be honest.
Right, are there any more comments before I take it to the vote? Councillor Barclay.
Perhaps, Chairman, we could let it be this year, be the last year that we send anybody.
And
pay for it.
we do get an invitation every year, but what are you saying, that we review the costings to the council next year rather than the invitations?
That's what I'm saying. You can easily reply very politely, and I'm sure that our lack of resources would be fully understood.
we review the costings next year, then the invitations will come. I mean, there is obviously a get-out route there that in future years where members pay all for themselves, but nevertheless this year we're on the understanding that the council pay for Councillor Williams and that Councillor Francis would pay for himself. Is there any more comment on that before I take it to the vote? And I would add that we review the costings next year onto that vote. Are you all content with that?
Yes.
Right, all those in favour of the proposal? Against? Abstentions? 1. Right, 2.
Could I just say I welcome the opportunity, but take on board, and I'm not going to be putting frivolous expenses claims in. We've got family in London. I'm happy to travel on the boat, so I welcome the opportunity, but I won't be silly. I won't take the mick.
Thank you for that. So that is passed. Councillor Williams and Councillor Francis will represent us and their partners at Buckingham Palace. Thank you. Right, moving on. We're going into part 2. However, we've got a couple of updates from members, and I did promise earlier on in the year that I would give opportunity to comment on those if necessary. Councillor Davis, have you got anything to say about yours or not?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to just bring people up to date on the radiotherapy position. The deadline with it that was extended ends on Wednesday, the 24th. I have actually been in, so I would encourage anybody who wants to. It's still on the website, on the website to tick the tick box exercise is still there. I'd just like to inform you I've actually been in touch with Alistair Thompson, who's the lead RT consultant at Trilisk, and clarified things, because I really felt that this was in the end a clinical decision as to what is best for the patients. And he made it quite clear that he'd actually just made a press release for the press, and he says, we believe that we offer an excellent service level of care using modern techniques, including radiotherapy and chemotherapy, and there is no evidence that patient care would be improved by this process. I therefore feel that we should back Trilisk to the hilt on this matter. I mean, my only concerns were that in very exceptional cases it might be appropriate to travel further, but he's made it quite clear that they have the equipment, they have the hardware, they can deliver all the treatment that is required. Occasionally they may be in contact with further up the line to consult with their colleagues on, for argument's sake, dosage levels, but don't quote me on that. But what I mean is they are in contact on a professional basis outside their trust, so I think we should support it. And I would also add that they're very well respected for the research that they do, and they have a very large research base, and I think that obviously this is something we should support, and it's also in the media at the moment, in the social media, and I think that we must make it quite clear where we stand on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we move on that one, I'd just like to thank Councillor Davis for all the hard work he's putting in. I know he's putting in a lot of hours at the moment, not only on the radiotherapy training, but shaping our future and everything else that goes with that. And it's a personal thanks to Adrian for that. It's taking a lot of your time, and we do appreciate it. Councillor Legg.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to draw people's attention to the fact that the MP for North Cornwall actually raised this question in Parliament of radiotherapy, and the Prime Minister encourages the people of Cornwall to respond to this consultation.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Councillor Grottick.
Can I just ask if the lead member for adults, or indeed any other colleague, or the chief executive as well perhaps, thinks that a council response would be of added value?
Councillor Barclay.
I would support the proposal, if that is a proposal, that the council makes a formal response in this instance.
We're actually...
Because radiotherapy involves a lot of patients from Scilly, and it is one of the issues that was frequently raised to the Community Health Council in those days. And knowing our transport difficulties and the time taken to be away at what is a very stressful time for patients really does deserve support.
We're actually in part 2, so I can't take a resolution on it, but however, I am quite prepared to listen to a suggestion as far as that is concerned and discuss it with Lead Member for Adults, Chief Exec, and progress it further from there. Ashley.
Chairman, I would make a suggestion that scrutiny pull it in, because you've got statutory health powers. If you pull it in, they have to come, because it's a major service redesign affecting residents of your local area. You have actually a scrutiny function got greater statutory powers in full council, and then you can follow that up. I think you could encourage quite a lot of the members of the public to attend. You can then follow it up with a letter from the Chair of Scrutiny and Chairman of Council and Lead Member for Adults.
I think the Chair of Scrutiny has just taken that one on board.
I believe it's on the list anyway.
Yeah, but I'm quite happy to enter into discussions, further discussions rather, with Chief Exec and Lead Member for Adults over this as well.
You can also refer to Secretary of State for Health.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Right. Thank you, Councillor Davis, for that. Much appreciated. Councillor Francis, have you got anything to say about your report? Okay, thank you. Councillor Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a question for Councillor Francis regarding the section on the airport and the EGNOS. Could you just clarify slightly on if there's any clarity on when that might be operational, please?
Yes, Craig might want to correct me on this, but basically we have questions about two of our runways, 09 and 14, where we have to have an environmental impact assessment done, which is unfortunately will obviously take further time and is delaying the process. But we think it will be signed off on runways 27 and 32 fairly shortly. So, there doesn't seem to be a problem with that. I don't know whether Craig
I'd like to ask Craig
Chairman, just very briefly.
A quick comment.
Yeah,
Craig.
just very briefly. For those two runways, 09 and 14, the issue actually isn't with the environmental impact assessment. We might not necessarily need to do that, but what we do need to do is go through a very formal consultation process. And at the moment, the issue that we have is that we're not sure what that consultation process or the length of time is that will actually take before we can actually switch on EGNOS for both those two runways, and it's likely to be quite considerable time because of the changes to regulations from the Civil Aviation Authority, and we may be caught up in the new regulations. We're doing everything we possibly can to progress on the on its implementation, but there have been some difficulties and some issues that we need to address.
I'd just like to clarify one point that I don't think it's a maybe that we're going to get caught up in the new regulations. We actually are caught up in the new regulations, and the goalposts changed at the end of 2017, unfortunately.
May I just a quick,
Councillor Sims.
A quick question, because the red tape in this is mad. Is it permissible to use it on the other runways, but not the two you can't use it on? It's just a curiosity more than anything else.
Potentially, yeah. Potentially.
Yeah. Councillor Barclay.
On a different issue, although I'd like to comment on the EGNOS thing, but going back to the waste collection, there was the idea of awarding a prize for the best recycler. And I think perhaps in our financial state, that would be a good idea if it could possibly result in ideas on saving money and being more efficient coming from the public. Perhaps the prize could be sourced, could be financed through the community fund. I think it would be an entirely appropriate project.
I'll leave Councillor Francis to go into discussions with Craig over that one.
I was going to suggest, Councillor Barclay, that perhaps we could ask somebody like Star Castle Estate to provide a prize rather than council pay.
Well done. Councillor Davis.
Sorry, I'd just like to help councillors perhaps not being non-flyers. When we talk about 4 runways, the runways are called, depending, they're designated by the number where you're facing, so we've only got 2 runways, so the main runway is approved, and I gather that the east-west one, in fact, is the one we're talking about, but it's from the direction, how they're named, so we've only got 2, not 4.
Technically, we do have 4 runways.
Right, I'd like to stop this discussion where
Sorry,
we are,
that's just what I've said.
Right, thank you for that. Are there any more points on that one? Right, thank you very much indeed. At 11:14, I now close the meeting. Thank you very much indeed.